Hi, my name's Rachel McLeod. I am a licensed clinical social worker and emotional wellness coach. And today I want to share with you a strategy for getting off of your medications for good, your anxiety, depression, and or traumatic stress medications for good. Um, and I'm going to start off because this is a hot topic. This many people want to that I work with are desperate to get off their medications. Many people, this is a hot topic because there's this all this. Is medication good? Is medication wrong? Are you weak for having medication? All this stuff that really is none of anybody's business. But really, let's just start right there. I wanted you to know where I'm coming from. I I'm a fan of medication if you need it and if you want it and if it's already in your life. Hi, Claudia. um, and Because I believe that we intuitively, there we go, know what we need. And so if you need medication, I believe you. If you don't need medication, I believe you. Now, if we're working together and I see that you are really having a difficult time doing this work because you are just being hammered with too many symptoms, I may talk with you about getting some medication on your team. Now, I don't do that very often because I really believe that your system, your body, your mind is supposed to be functioning healthy and well by itself, right? But that's not always the case, especially if you've got an anxiety, depression, and trauma disorder. Yes, so I'm responding to Claudia. I'm glad you're joining with us today, and I'm so sorry for your loss. And I know that your system is going through a ton right now. And so I hope some of the information that I'm about to share today is going to be helpful to you and to anybody else watching. So, um, so with medications, I don't believe it's something to be demonized. I think it can be a very helpful part of the journey. I probably, in all of my work with clients, I've probably talked to about 5% of my clients about getting some medication assistance on board. I don't find that if people don't come to me with medication, I find they typically don't need medication to do their healing work, which is my entire business, right? And I try to mind my own business. It's one of my values and principles. And so if what I find is that if you don't come to me needing medication, you can do this work without it. Sometimes I find that when we're doing the healing work, that some people can't. Right? Some people have a more difficult time where it takes longer than it needs to take. And since I do a lot of work with a lot of people, I know the pace that the brain can usually keep. If it's not keeping that pace of healing, there's a reason. And we want to figure out what that reason is and we want to support your brain. Sometimes that looks like medication. And like I said, it's a very small percentage of the time. But what happens more frequently for me is that many people will come to me already on some medications. Some people will come to me and they're like thinking about getting on medication. They don't know if they should. They don't know if they shouldn't. They don't know if they should. That's not necessarily my business. That's between you and your doctor. But after working with you and your brain for a while, I can definitely give more insight into that. So I am medication friendly, and sometimes I am even medication partnering. I'm happy to partner with medication. I'll partner with anything to get you well. And so that's where I'm coming from with this medication thing. And my goal, because I know that brains are supposed to be healthy and well and make sure that we're healthy and well, my everything I do with clients is built to restore healthy brain function and that their brain is doing what brains should be doing independently. And so, because that's my goal, and I will pull in anything and everything to do that, to reach that goal, many of my clients get off their medications. And I have a process for this, and I want to pull back the curtain and show you so that you can get some ideas, catch some inspiration, and really enjoy your life, really. And then I don't typically have clients that will stay on medications, just because of I'll share that with you as well. But if you need medications, that means that something is not happening in your brain. right? That your brain is not doing something it needs to do. And there can be any number of reasons for this. It can be biological. Like sometimes what I find is vitamins and minerals are deficient. And so the brain isn't getting what it needs to be able to create health and wellness. Sometimes it's, uh, I've talked brainwave stuff. That's what I call it, because that's not my business either. I don't know much about it, and I really can't even give a great conversation about it. But I do know that I've had clients in helping their systems reestablish healthy brain function. I have sent clients off to get some lens neurofeedback. Check it out. Pretty cool stuff. They've come back to me looking like $1,000,000. I'm like, whoa. Anyway, so I have definitely been somebody who's like, go do that, because we want to weave as many solutions here as possible, but in a way that gets the result of healthy brain function. So, but also if the stuff that is not resolving happens to do with trauma, um, uh, emotional baggage, I want to use all the words for it, limiting beliefs, cognitive distortions, all or nothing thinking, habits that are maladaptive habits. I'm speaking clinical talk. I'd like to not be doing that, but we'll do all the things. But if it's that stuff that your brain is supposed to be working on and is not able to work on, and you throw medication on top of that and leave it, problems are going to show up throughout your life, because your brain actually needs to resolve that stuff to solve the problems in your life that are showing up. I have tons of videos about that. I feel like I cannot say that enough, because I know that there's so many people that just like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go forward. I don't want to go in there. And they're using medication to stay out of there. And I never, ever, never, ever, 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 never recommend that as the long-term plan. I think that can be used for short terms. I think that can be a great strategy to get your energy back and to get your feet under you, to get stabilized, to get grounded. I think that can be wonderful, but over a lifetime plan, no, I would not recommend it, because even though you might be feeling better, your brain is still doing the stuff to try to resolve that, and it's taking up time and energy, and there's so many processes going in there. Plus, what we're starting to learn is that people, the more unresolved emotional and mental challenges that you're facing, the more likely it is that you will die from one of the 5 top medical things, and that we are starting to learn that there is a relationship and a correlation between emotional and mental health and your physical health. And there are some really straight lines there. Like if you are in emotional distress, you're actually kicking your body out of a healing mode and out of detox mode and out of all these things that your body's supposed to naturally be doing for you to make sure you're well. And you're going into a survival state. And that's not a lot of great things happen in there, except for you're staying alive. It doesn't mean you're thriving. It doesn't mean anything. And so I never want that for anybody. I would love t-shirts about that and banners and all sorts of stuff. I don't want people to keep having unresolved trauma and baggage, emotional and mental baggage, that they're carrying around because it's taxing your system. And it's just not a long-term plan. And you can kind of fake it till you make it, but your life, the fabric that you're creating life with, eventually tells the story of your trauma and of your mental and emotional baggage. And that's just not, I don't want that for you, especially because when I do this work, I help people do this as painlessly as possible, which is not how the old strategies used to be, right? It used to be you talk about your trauma and you write letters about it, you describe it, and your nervous system is going off and you're re-traumatizing yourself and it's not moving and it's stuck, and then you just have to retell the story over and over and over again, and it's just really painful, awful, and then you have to deal with all these. Please don't do that. There's so many easier ways to do this. And so having said that, let's get into the strategy. So you're hearing me say yay to medication, yay to you not using medication. You're hearing me say yay to you staying on medication as long as you need it. Always hear that from me. As long as you need this, stay on it. Now, the strategy I'm going to lay out for you is so that you no longer need it. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so I've got my notes, so we're gonna stay on topic. Okay, okay. So ultimately, the strategies that I use are I'm gonna take it from the top and we'll work in. Okay, is really to eliminate each and every symptom of anxiety, depression, traumatic stress. Period. Because if you don't have any symptoms, you don't need any medication. That's the simplest equation I got for you. And that's the one I work off of. And that's the one my entire system is built off of. Whether I was working in therapy with this or whether I was coaching, anything I'm doing has all these things stacked into it. And the goal there is symptom elimination. And I walk people through strategies that resolve this layer by layer by layer, and to move symptoms through the healing pathways, and to get your brain to change them and eliminate them and process them and make them a non-issue, because brains are good at that. That's actually what brains are supposed to be doing. And it's really pretty phenomenal. I've seen brains do this with some of the most traumatic things on the earth. And I've seen people come out of them, and on the other side of some of the most horrible traumatic things, people will have gratitude for them. Like their brain has done so much with the issue. Like first, maybe they would be crying about it. Maybe they'd be horrified. Maybe they'd be denying it. Maybe they would never look at it. Maybe this, maybe that. After we do this work and work on this one problem, all of a sudden it's like their brain just takes it and it's like, oh, and there's so much gratitude and insight. I don't understand how that works, because I'm just like, I understand how that works, but I just have a hard time wrapping my brain around that, because I look at some of the traumas I've helped people work through, and I'm just like, that would have taken me under, done. And then to come out and be grateful for it, I don't even know. It's like how that process takes place, but I watch it happen over and over and over again. And I've had some similar experiences in my life, but never those kinds of horrendous traumas. So number one, the brain really, its job is to eliminate symptoms. That's its whole job. Its whole job is to keep you well, to figure out, to strategize, to use all the resources to keep you well. If it's not doing that, something's off. Okay. And so what I have people do, the first thing I have them do is I have them map out what is not working, because you don't need help with what's working. That stuff, keep doing it. Do a lot of it, right? As much as you can. A lot of times our symptoms will prevent us from doing the good things that we can do, like exercising and all that stuff. I hate hearing people tell me that their therapist told them to go out and walk once a day. Like, if I could walk once a day, I would walk once a day. Don't you think? Anyway, but let's do this stuff, because then you're going to be able to do what your therapist says and go walk once a day, because that's really good for your brain. And it's great advice. It's just not the right timing, right? So what we first want to do is we want to map out the stuff that's wrong, that's not working well, right? And that can be overwhelming. And so when we get all that out on the table, we want to use an intervention, because emotion is already starting to come up. And what I have people do is attention and intervention, on repeat, on repeat. And I teach them all sorts of ways to be creative in intervention. And you'll hear some of that today. But so attention and intervention. So the mapping, when we map everything out, we are paying attention to all of the problems. Then the emotion is starting to come up and rise, which if that rises too high, your survival system will come on and put the whole kibosh on everything that we're doing, and we'll have to pack it up and we won't be able to work on it anymore. So we want to start taking care of the emotion that's rising because of everything we've got mapped out. And we're going to use an intervention for that. And the easiest one I can talk to you about now is emotional freedom techniques. So if you know that one already, because I've been talking about it a lot, you're going to start using that as you're mapping out all these problems that you're experiencing. And I want on this map, I want your nightmares. I want the racing thoughts. I want that pit in your stomach on this map. I want your racing heart. I want your panic attacks. I want your insecurities. I want your fears. I want your phobias on this map. I want right? You see why this map can get quite hot emotionally? That's why you're going to keep tapping. because we need to deal with that emotion. Otherwise, like I said, the kibosh comes. So you're using your intervention, and maybe your intervention is, maybe you're good at EMDR and you start using EMDR for yourself. If you're not good at EMDR, I encourage you to get professional help to become good. It can be a very dangerous intervention that actually brings out the kibosh faster and harder than just looking at this little map will. So definitely don't play around with that if you don't have skills, but you can use any interventions you have. You're somebody who clears your chakras. You're somebody who, you want to use a mind body intervention, but the ones I specialize in using that I can tell you will get you results, really can't tell you about any of the other ones. Because that's not how I do my thing. And I want to mind my own business. So the interventions that I encourage people to use and I help people use to resolve these issues is emotional freedom techniques, thought-filled therapy, thought field, like a whole baseball field, thought field therapy, EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and energy medicine. So those are the ones I have the most experience using, and I know they will help us do this work. I'm very confident in them. That's why I keep handing them out to people. So you're going to be doing the mapping and getting all of the problems out here, and we're going to be tapping. Eventually, we want to take each one of these problems and resolve them fully. And let me just keep talking about this and we'll get to that part. And then if there's nightmares, we need that one resolved. We need this one resolved. Because the fact of the matter is that you have medication because you're having nightmares, right? So we need, in order for you to get rid of the medication, you got to not have nightmares. So we need to resolve the nightmares. No big deal. That brains do that. But we got to do it, because we can't be pretending like we're doing it and you take the medication off and now you're hammered with nightmares again. That's not fun. And we want to take the racing thoughts, and we want to take the pit in your stomach, and we want to work through those and eliminate each and every one of them that we've mapped out. And guess what? While we work together, we find more things to put on the map. We put them all on the map. Everything gets to be on the map. Okay? And so, yeah, that map kind of grows. But and we let it grow, because there's no problem with that, because as a matter of fact, as we keep doing these layers, your brain will start resolving 3 or 4 at a time, instead of just in the beginning. We'll fight tooth and nail to get that one resolved. And once that one is resolved, then we go to the next one. But as we keep growing, we can get 3 and 4 at the same time, and your brain's just rocking. So, hi, Jess. Okay, so the next thing I have people do with this map is, a lot of times I have them rock this map out for a week, and I have them put about 14 hours on that map. And so we're going to use interventions about all the little things on this map. That's number one. And this helps so many things. It helps you, 1, tune into yourself. 2, it helps you build your skills in working through the emotions that come up. That's important. A third one it does, it cools off the limbic system, because each one of these things, your brain will start reacting to them differently as you keep using an intervention on them, because your inner healer will actually get to start changing the energy around it. It'll change the programming around it. And so you'll already start noticing a lot of changes then. I've got to turn this off. The next thing that we're going to do is that what I walk people through next is how to work through events. Now, these are any events. These are events that are tripping you up in the present, in the past, in the future. These are events that are painful. These are events that are emotional. These are events that are traumatic. Doesn't matter. And there's tons of strategies to do that. There are some people that can run into their traumatic memories, and we can use an intervention there. And if that's you, then do that. Right? There's other people that you can't be on the same planet with your trauma. You can't think about it at all. There's still strategies to get your brain to heal it without paying it very much attention, and using some brain tricks in there so that you can really heal stuff without diving into them. And that is huge, especially for people who feel like, I don't know how this will ever heal. And if that is your sense, then when I hear that, I'm hearing, okay, we're going to need some of these other strategies over here. And there's never an event that your brain cannot heal. Its entire job is to do that healing work. And it can do stuff, I'm telling you, has blown my mind. Um, oops, hold on a second. Okay, hold on, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. All right. Okay, so we're gonna go through events, any events, any lifetime stuff, and this doesn't really matter because it all roads lead in. And these events that have happened have been instrumental to your life and who you are. So when we work through events, we are learning so much about you. You are learning so much about you. These are events people never have to use words for. I don't have to ever know what's going on in the event because we're not using talk strategies. And so this allows people to have so much privacy, as much privacy as they want while they're working through traumas. Because I'll tell you what, people don't want to talk about some things that have happened, and you never need to heal. Okay. And what I see happen is people will have things that they never want to talk about, but all of a sudden they heal it and they're talking about it all the time, left and right, because they can without being punished by their brain, without going into flashbacks, without this, because your brain healed it. And once your brain heals things, all the symptoms that are attached to it, all the the symptoms, the brain dysfunction, the misreactions, the misinterpretations associated with that event, your brain clears them out and throws them away and builds new stuff for it. It's awesome. So that's the next layer of this. And by this layer, this is the second week of my program, and by this layer, people are like, the whole, like, it's a different story, because we have gone in and we have worked with some deep fabric of their being, and there's just so much change that's happened. And so the next layer that I will really work at is we're going into the body, because this stuff has to be cleared from the body. We worked on the mind, working on memories, but we have to clear it from the body. We have to get your heart not to have the same response to this thing. Like, we need your heart not to be doing all this stuff. We need your stomach not to be nauseating. We need your stomach we need to take that pit out of there, because your body is experiencing all this stuff too. And so we can't, if your stomach has a pit in it, it doesn't matter how much you know that this is not a problem. You have a pit in your stomach, and that's very distracting, and it feels terrible, and it's not okay, and it's trauma, it's anxiety, it's depression in your body. We've got to get that out of there. And so that's the next thing that we'll do, is really go into the body to resolve things. And the body will actually, it's really phenomenal. The body will take you anywhere. The body will tell you things that you don't even know and remember. And guess what? You never have to remember. You just have to help your body. And that's really, some people want to remember stuff, and so I'll help them with that. But most people just were like, make it go away, man. And that's plenty. Both are right paths for them. Okay. And then we need to clear that out. And I find lots of things. When people have panic attacks and their arms and legs go numb, their body wants to talk about that. So we will tune in there and help clear that from the body. Let me see, heavy legs. I've had people that have really, like, can't move their legs during a panic attack. And we need to clear that so that their legs don't freeze up when that thing happens. I've had people go weak in the knees. I've had people have pain in their shoulders and their head, headaches. That stuff has to clear. And so that's another layer of the work that we do. Because you need medication for racing heart stuff, and for heart palpitations, and your stomach is nauseous, and you've got an ulcer forming, and you're diarrheaing because your GI is upset. You need medication for those things. If we want you to get off the medication, we've got to stop the problem. Once the problem is stopped, then you can take off the medication and see what happens, and then that's another phase of this strategy. Okay. So the next thing after that is that there is a small percentage of trauma, anxiety, depression work that happens because you're just missing information. Your brain is confused. It can't quite put all the puzzle pieces together. It's got this puzzle piece and it's looking over the thing and it's like, I don't know where to put it. And the thing is that some people will take the puzzle piece from the brain and put it in there. And like, it goes right there. But the brain can't do it itself. And so if the brain can't do it itself, that means in real time, it's not going to happen. Okay. And so this is not the point for anybody to take the piece from you. This is the point where let's help the brain find the puzzle piece and get the puzzle piece in the right spot. And let's turn it enough times, and show the brain how to turn it. And then let's see if it can put it in there now. And it does, because all of a sudden it says, I did this. Your brains do that. They totally throw that party. And you'll feel it and you'll notice it. But there's lots of things you can do to help the brain to be able to put the puzzle piece in. And it's got to be able to find the puzzle piece, and you got to kind of help it. And so I do that by asking it some questions. I'll ask questions. Another thing I will help people do is resource. Like if you're ever at work or you're doing a project and you're missing something and you're just like, let me go ask Susie, because maybe she knows. And then Susie's talking about it and she says something that's kind of close and you're like, I got it. And then you come back and you're like, and then boom, you're flowing. That's really what happens here. And it's like, we need to use a resource. We need to let your brain resource. And maybe it's like, well, if I'm going to use there's millions of ways to resource. I'm going to use an example. An example could be like we invite, maybe we're working on a memory and it's almost resolved, but your brain still just can't figure this last piece out. And we say, well, what would happen? Let's bring Grandpa William into this memory, and let's see what happens then. And so your brain will kind of like shift, open up, pull in, because your brain is unlimited. Right? It doesn't matter if Uncle William has passed or not. It's like you can remember him. You're pulling him up as a resource. And he pulls it in. And now we'll play the story in a different way using, well, Uncle William would say, or Grandpa William would say X, Y, and Z, that your brain couldn't consider using it this way. And now that Grandpa said this thing, now your brain is like, that's right, I could do this. And maybe it's not even the thing that was said, but it's just the thing that sparked the right idea, and everything's in motion. And then the brain's like, let me turn the puzzle piece and put it in. It worked. Ah! And then you just see the brain moving. You're moving. And a lot of times my clients are like this. I don't get involved with that. I let that happen because that is a brilliant process. And then they're well, this is what I think. And then what about this? And this and that and this and that. And the brain's just running around. Right? And that's great, because it was stuck before. It was just stuck. And so that's a piece. And so when we get there, we're getting to help the brain layer in stuff that was missing. So that, because it's like train tracks, right? It's like this part's built, but there's a hole right there. The tracks haven't been laid. The track's like out the back someplace. It's probably around there, but it didn't get close. And so you can see the other side, but you can't get there. You just can't. And so it's like, and then the brain will back up and do it again, and then again, and then again. And this happens over and over and over and over again. And then eventually you get tired of that and you figure out a workaround, but it's a long workaround. And then you can get on the track, and like drama. So really what we want to do here is we want to build the track. And that resourcing can really do that for you. And next thing you know, you've got a nice clear track and your brain is moving in beautiful motion, and no hiccup whatsoever. And this is when people can do things that they've never been able to do before. And the brain typically will lay those themselves, but you'll find every once in a while that there's just one that we just can't find. And that's when we'll use some resourcing. One of the next layers that we go after is beliefs. Beliefs are the root issues of all the things. These are the events, what you learned in all the events, what you learned about yourself, what you learned about the world. And the brain, by using attention and intervention, you can pay attention to any belief that you have and use an intervention, and your brain will start to analyze it. And if it's one that you felt so real and it felt so natural, it felt so right, and I need this belief, if your brain looks at it, and it will start like breaking it down, and then it'll be like, I don't know if that's actually accurate. And it'll keep doing this. The more you can pay attention to it, and using an intervention will really help you do that. Your brain will really take it apart and discard the stuff that it doesn't want anymore. And then it will pull in, it says, this is better, this matches it, and it'll make something really beautiful. And the next thing you know, and then your subconscious mind's like, ooh, that's really pretty. I'd like to have that, but I can't, because what about this belief? It doesn't match. And it's all sitting up in the way. Like, in your subconscious mind, there's like all these things in storage. And this belief right here, your subconscious loves it. It's like, I want that. But it takes it back there and looks around where to put it. It can't put it somewhere because this is in its spot. And it'll tell you, but mom's not going to like that. But what if we do that? Then people think you're a big show off. And your brain will start, your subconscious mind will really start kind of torturing you with all this terrible stuff that's been in your subconscious. And that's when you want to grab all that stuff and you want to tap on it, pay attention, and intervention, right? And this is a fun, but sometimes difficult place because you're dealing with your subconscious programming. And it's not a logical process. Anyway, but you can get your whole subconscious to reorganize in alignment to these beautiful beliefs by doing the same process, attention and intervention. Okay. And so we want to do that because your subconscious mind is set to keep you exactly where you are right now, which is with dysfunction and lots of symptoms of anxiety, depression, traumatic stress. If we leave that there, what's going to happen is that your system you'll have healed all the stuff, all the whatever, but you will create new drama and you will create the new need for medication. And so we really need to take that apart to build something new and to allow your brain to have a comfort zone of health. And we would love that to already be there, but that's not how brains work. And if you've been having anxiety, depression, traumatic stress for a really long time, your programming is set right there. And it's probably been set there since childhood, and we need to reorganize that and play with that, and the brain will do it. It's phenomenal. Anyway, and I like to help people do that very systematically so we get the whole thing, or enough of the whole thing that it no longer needs to create that same dysfunction. It no longer needs that. So anyway, beliefs. The next thing that comes on that I walk my clients through that I want you to understand you need this is that it's time now for your boundaries. Because if you don't have to, everybody has boundaries. They're natural to you. They're part of your system. But sometimes anxiety, depression, trauma, socialization can really disconnect us from our boundaries, and we bury them, and we can't even hear them, and we don't even recognize them anymore, and we just can't. But what happens here, if you don't have healthy boundaries, what's going to happen is people are going to keep hurting you, and situations are going to keep hurting you, and it's going to just reopen a bunch of wounds, and you're going to need that medication again. And so we need your boundaries to come up because you need protection in life. I mean, that's why we have skin, right? I'm not trying to say that you need to run around being all defensive, but you need to have something really healthy, keeping you, and keeping them. That's what we're doing down here. And so what we want to do next is usually people have 3 ways that they have problems with their boundaries. And the first one is that they cannot identify what their boundary is. And that's most of the work here is this one's already, it's coming along nicely. We're already building that in. That's happening. But sometimes that's where we need to start. We need to do some extra work. The next place is that they need to be able to communicate their boundaries. And if you know what your boundaries are, but you can't communicate them, you're probably going into a survival state every time it's time for you to communicate your boundaries. Like you're in freeze mode. I just can't. Or you're in fawn mode and you're just fawning all over people because you're in a survival strategy. Well, what happens here is that we can help the brain reprocess that and reconfigure that situation, and we can actually take out that survival mode so that you can stay in a regulated place and you're allowed to speak up for yourself. And that's specific work that I help people do, because it's one thing to say speak up for yourself, but if your limbic system, if your survival system has pushed the mute button, no words are coming out of your mouth. Or if your survival system, it's like time for boundaries and it pushes fight and you're fighting everyone over your boundaries, that's not even going to be effective. And then, and then there's flee, and every time it's time to say your boundaries, you just go run and hide. That's not your fault. That's how your brain is functioning. And if you think that's your fault, we're going to have to spend a lot of time there because it's not. And you're going to beat yourself up, and the situation's not going to change. It's just a brain function. And so we want to address that as if it's brain function. Okay? So boundaries work. And what happens is they start to pop out. And the courage to communicate the boundary starts to pop out. Now, the third place is that you need to be able to maintain the boundary. And some people, I will assess them, and they're good at 1 and 2, but they can't do anything for 3. They say their boundary. The first time somebody comes along, they just, And then there's no boundaries again. right? So now we need to be able to work on that ability and willingness and resources and strength to be able to maintain your boundaries. Like, especially if you've got children, they're coming at you like 1,000 times. You need to have the ability and strength and endurance to say, hold your boundary for yourself 1,010 times. Like, if they're coming 1,000 times, you need 1,010, right? Because it's your boundary and it's part of your health and how you keep yourself well. And if you're not doing that, you're gonna receive a lot of injuries, emotional and mental injuries in life, and that will land you back up with medication. And then one of the last things that I help people do is I help them clear out old gunk from their relationships. By this time, there's a lot of health already built in there. There's a lot of great new thoughts because the brain, we got rid of a bunch of trash. And what happens then is the brain's like, ooh, look at all this open stuff. What should we put in there? And it wants to go shopping like at an upgraded version of awesome things to put in your subconscious mind. So there's lots of that already has happened. But there's always an opportunity to go in there and work with relationships because we've got boundaries on, and now we need to go with relationships. And a lot of times we'll do even deeper healing there and see how, with the new boundaries, what does this look like? This is a lot of anger, hate, hurt, grief work that people are ready for by this time, and that it's one of the easiest places to do it because brain's already like rocking. And it's also a place where I will work with people for their relationship with themselves, if that's what the need is. Sometimes this has to do with relationship with food. Sometimes this has to do with a relationship with a job. Sometimes it's family members, family of origin, best friends, things that were cut off. Doesn't matter. All those things just are ways that for us to help you heal at a deeper level. And so I spend about some time there, about 4 hours myself, but I have clients do about 14 hours of work right there. And by this time, they're really awesome and really good, and they can really take care of themselves because I build that in along the way. Okay. So now what we have at this point is an entirely different system. And this is when we want to go back to the map and we want to see what else is on there. And a lot of times this is where people cross stuff off. We're crossing. This is when they'll see what issues are left, what issues have reduced, where we're at. So we want to get a new game plan right now. And then we'll do the same process again for the last little bits. And then we're going to see what happens. And I know that somebody's ready to start the talk about coming off their medications because they want to have the conversation, that we've gotten through this level of work and they're confident. And I see them start to pick up on themselves, start communicating their values. I start to see their brain working in a very healthy and functional way. And then I will have a conversation because medication is like a backpack. It's like a bag, right? You get to hang it on the wall and it just hangs there. You don't have to carry that backpack. And then you stuff all these symptoms in there, right? You're stuffing your symptoms in there. And then it just sits on the wall for you and it carries some of that for you. That's pretty awesome. Okay. And at some point when you have all that stuff, you still got to work with your own stuff, right? Now, you and I, or you and whoever, have worked through the rest of that baggage, and you're kind of walking around like, this is pretty good. You know, you're walking around, you're rocking your life like this. You're backpack free. And then you're like, you kind of look over at this little bag on the wall and you're like, I should probably, get in there and figure out what's in the bag. And so that's what we start doing that's when I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about this. And what's going to happen is when you stop that medication, all the things in the bag are going to come out. Are you okay with that or are you not? And that's when people are like, yeah, let's do it. And if they're like this, I'm like, okay, what's coming up? Right? And then we're going to map all that stuff out. I'm terrified. What if this starts happening? What if that starts happening? What if this, that, the other? And then we're going to put all that on the paper. We're going to attention and intervention for a long while until I can tell that they're not in an emotional survival state and they're actually in a thinking state. And then what happens is they start thinking, well, I could do this and I could do that and I could do this. And if they keep in that state, pretty soon they will have created a plan for themselves. And my job is like, okay, now when this stuff comes off, we should expect these symptoms, and we need to be ready. Like, let's like be here at the bag, like as they start popping off, because as soon as the medication starts to go down, you're going to be trying to catch these symptoms before they like if they're like wet water balloons or something and they fall on the ground and like splash all over your life. And if that happens, what are you going to do? You know? And that's when we're using the intervention a lot during this time, because we want to help, we want to encourage the brain to think and process, and don't just get stuck in the emotion of it. Let's create a plan. And so by that time, sometimes they were like, well, I don't think I should go all the way off, but I think I could come off of it a little bit. Let me go talk with my doctor. And so they'll go talk with their doctor. They'll say, I've been doing this, this, and that. This is what I think. And the doctor is like, okay. And so they'll reduce it. And then we will keep at it, because we're going to imagine what's in there. And we're going to try to predict what's in there, because it doesn't matter if we're right or wrong. We're helping the brain think this thing through and move anything that could get it stuck. And so then we stay there. And as the medication comes down, symptoms will come out at us. And then we will do this process until the person's feeling like, that was awesome. I got this. And then they'll say, I'm going to go talk to my doctor again. And I'm like, okay, do that. And so if their doctor says, yeah, let's try it and let's bring it down, then they'll come down by half or more. Some people will just come all the way off. And they're just at a place where they're ready to like, just come at me. If you're mine and you're my symptoms, let's do this, because they're confident at this point that they can resolve whatever symptom comes their way. Because the way to resolve symptoms is the same. It doesn't matter how big they are or how little they are. They're the same. And if they're confident enough in that system and that in their ability to do this, which is what I've been prepping them for this whole time, then they'll do that, and they'll just come straight off. And then they'll see how it goes. There's never a time you can't get back on the medication. It's not a fail, right? It's just that when this happens, right? When you get off the medication and you're doing your best, you might notice that the symptoms in the bag require this much strength or endurance, and you have this much. And so that little gap right there, it's like you tried to run the marathon, which, anyway, I'm not a fan of the marathon. So, but let's pretend that you want to run the marathon. If you get out there, like if I were to run the marathon, I'd be like this far, and then I have to go home and sit down. Now, did I fail? If I quit, maybe, but I didn't. I just did one round. Okay, now I'm going to get out there and try again. I'm going to get a little further, and I'm going to build up endurance enough so that I can run the whole thing. And that sometimes is what happens with the journey for getting off medication, is that you come all the way off and you do your best, but you get whatever happens, and you're like, I need more. I need to get back on. You go get back on. And then what happens there is we will work through what happened, because we got to look at what's in the bag that's hanging on your wall. And now we can create a specific and targeted plan for those symptoms, just like we did before. And we can work on releasing those, resolving those. And then pretty soon this person says, I wonder if I could get off now. This is never a conversation I have to have with anybody. I never say, hey, I don't think you need your medication anymore. It's like people want to be well. There's a natural human drive to be well, and let's support the process. So if we did round 1 and you struck out and you got sent back to more medication, and we did all this work, and now you're like, I wonder if I could get off again, go talk to your doctor. See what happens. And we do the same process. And what I have found is that people can really stay off. That first year after working together is really one of the most important years. That's where they're reestablishing. I mean, it's like you're a whole new person. You're more yourself, and it's like you need to have the endurance to be yourself. You need to have the skill to be yourself. Some people, this is the first time they've ever been themselves, and so they don't have any skills for it. And so they'll get knocked off and all this stuff. And it's like this first year of work here is just really important. And that's number one, why I offer all of my graduates free group monthly coaching for the life of my business on an ongoing basis, is number one, like I want to make sure they still have support that first year, not just with me, but with the other graduates. And then, and I want them to keep the strategies, keep using the interventions, keep applying this, become masters at this, because you're being masters at your survival center, your thinking center, your subconscious mind. When is that not a great thing? I don't know. And so, um, so let's see. I was checking to make sure I'm in tune with this. If there's any questions, if you have any questions about what I'm talking about, go ahead and put that there. Um, so at this point, this is really rinse and repeat until people are all the way off, if that's their goal. And I, with how much the brain heals itself, I haven't ever had anybody. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's the kind of people I attract. But I haven't anybody that wants to stay on medication. And I haven't met anybody who's done this work. And I had one client who I had to end with early because I closed my practice, and we had done so much inner world transformation. We had done so much work, and I was saying, I do think it's time for you to make sure that your medication matches your current needs, because it's a whole nother picture. And that was a conversation for her to have with her doctor, because I don't know anything about that stuff. But what I do know is that the woman I was working with before and the woman I'm working with now are totally different. And the symptom levels are totally different. And so I think that, anyway, but that is my strategy for how I help people come off medications for good. And I would encourage you not to come off your medications if you're currently on them without a process like that. You really want to get rid of the problem before you get rid of the support. If you get rid of the support first, you have more problem. And if the problem's already kicking your butt, what are you going to do with more problem, right? This is why I also feel this is the same thing I do with emotional eating. I am not trying to have someone stop using food, because it's an effective and powerful mind-body intervention. Eating is. I'm not going to have them do that while there's still all these problems, because what's going to happen is they're going to stop eating and soothing and comforting themselves, and now they got more problem, and it's going to bury them, and it's going to send them back to emotional eating. And the survival system will get so mad that it might even make them eat more or gain more weight. So if you try to do that again, you're going to have to work even harder. And so I just would rather, let's eliminate symptoms, because we can do that right away. We can do that right away. You got 1,000 of those puppies, we're coming for every one of them, right? And then all of a sudden we look up and there's a whole nother situation to evaluate. So that's how I do it. That's, my clients have had a lot of success with that. And yeah. And I've doing this same work has really helped help people not have to get on medications as well. Like, there's a testimony you can watch of my client Kristen, who was on the brink of deciding, do I need medication or do I not? And then her doctor had ordered her some. It was at the pharmacy, but she decided to enroll in my program, and she was like, hold that, let's see if after this program I need it. I'm going to get it, but I'm going to try this one last thing. And she hasn't been on medication since. And so there's all sorts of things happening here, and there's just no wrong path. So as long as your intention is healing and to get where you need to go and to be your vibrant, healthiest self, you have so many things on your side to do that. Okay, so and that's it. Let me wrap this up. If there's any questions, I want to answer those. If you are feeling like, hey, I want to see if this is something I can do with you, Rachel, sounds exactly like what I'm looking for, and you're interested in working with me, I encourage you to book a call with me by going to rachelmcleod.com/call. There we go. I'm going to say that again because I blipped out. rachelmcleod.com/call. And then we'll have a talk about this, see if this is the right fit for you. There's lots of information on, I'm going to be updating my website so you can get a better feel for me, what the journey with me would look like. It looks like this, but you might be more of a wordy, and so you want to read about it, or whatever your sensory style is. I've also included a link to this in the top to my webinar that shows the 5 steps my clients take to eliminate anxiety. There's more information there. If you're just loving the information and you want more, you're welcome to jump on my email list. You can do that by going to rachelmcleod.com/email, simple. And that's it. So those are some ways to work with me if I am part of your journey. And if I am not, take this information and really do what you can with it and heal. It's time to heal. It is time to heal. And your brain is standing ready to do it. As a matter of fact, the more symptoms of anxiety, depression, trauma disorders you have, the more your brain is actually trying to heal. That's evidence that your brain is trying to heal itself. It's just stuck. And that doesn't make it any less painful, but it's really the deal. Okay, so I do see a question. I'm going to answer that. Alex says, how can I strengthen my boundaries so that I can build the confidence to reduce my need for support, such as medications? I don't find that boundaries need to be strengthened. Okay, I find when I'm moving around in people's inner world and I'm taking a look at things, even in my own inner world, those things are pretty strong. And the thing that I find is that people are not hearing their boundaries, that there's not the connection between self and boundaries has not been made. And this happens because, like, especially if you come from a generational trauma, that means your system supports trauma, and boundaries eradicate trauma. And so healthy boundaries eradicate trauma. So in order to have a successfully dysfunctional traumatic family unit, you have to not have boundaries. And so the system, the unit, is socialized to disconnect or never to connect a child with their boundaries. But we naturally will do that, and we will disconnect it. Like, for instance, we do this in very small ways, like when a kid doesn't want to share. And we're like, no, they're like, I don't want to share, my turn is not over. We say, now don't be selfish, Johnny. Share your doll with Hillary. And this is overriding a boundary that this child has. And it's not convenient. Right? It's not convenient because now you look like the selfish parent whose child doesn't share, and you feel all this. Your mom's looking at you like, and your friend is like, we don't want to play with her because Johnny doesn't share, and Johnny's selfish. No, Johnny has said, I don't feel like sharing. That's all that's happened, people. And when we support that, oh, Hillary, Johnny doesn't want to share yet. But let's talk with him. Maybe we can figure out when he does want to share. Now we're keeping that stuff intact. We're keeping Johnny's connection with himself intact. His self said, I'm not letting go of this thing. And we say, no, put that aside. Who cares about what you want? Everyone's so much more important. Look at Hillary's face. She's upset. You can't make her feel bad. Right? And those are just one. That's one of thousands of ways. And so I think that so that is ways that we weaken the connection to self. And children have so many connections, so many feelings and beliefs that are sometimes not convenient to the family unit, especially if the family unit is already stressed or traumatized. The child's self isn't prioritized. And that's tough. And most people don't intend to do that consciously. But then we start that pattern, and then pretty soon we have that going on. Right? And pretty soon we've disconnected that kid from his boundaries. And then the kid can't find him when they get older. It's like, I really don't want to take this extra shift at work, but I got to share. And it doesn't quite feel like it's right for me, but what will my mom say? And brains are doing this at a mile a minute. So this little process I'm doing right here happens like, bzz, like that's it. But it's like, what, I don't know. I don't know what the right thing for me to do is. And so, come on, but Johnny, you got to decide now. Oh, okay, fine, I'll take the shift. And now he goes home, and his wife is like, Johnny, you know that you're supposed to be at this baseball game with your son, and you took an extra shift, right? And now there's a problem. And the problem looks like Johnny doesn't want to be there for his kid. But the fact of the matter is Johnny couldn't hold his own boundary because it got weakened and messed up in the whole situation. And so to resolve that, what we do is, number one, Johnny in that situation as an adult, right? Because that's what I do. Help adults. I don't know how to help kiddos. find a talented person. But as an adult, in that moment, Johnny's brain is like, I don't know how to process this internal conflict. There's like 5 different decisions, and I can't make a decision. And I at the time, and survival mode. That's all survival mode stuff. If we can insert a tapping right there, his brain will shift from survival back to thinking center where there's choice and creativity. So we could use that route as treatment for this. Or we could get back and we can review it like an event and be like, what happened? Tell me the details. Let's make a movie. And have him use an intervention after the fact, after he already blew it, pissed everybody off, created a whole scene in his life. And now, he's just a bad dad. And now his whole self has to, okay, let's just make a scene, make an event right there. And let's just move through that with an intervention. Let's move the emotion through that. And then what happens, the brain starts to slow it down and look at stuff. And it's so like, but I didn't want to take this. And then it's like, well, why didn't you listen to yourself? Well, I didn't listen to myself because, and you'll see it in the moment. The brain will say, Mom says this. What will someone think? You didn't share this. And when is it time to share? Is it not time to share? And you're using an intervention this whole time. And should I share, not share? What about my kid? How to hold this boundary? And all of a sudden the brain says, you know what? My boundary is important and I'm going to share this. And I'm going to say, no, I'm not. Next time I'm not doing it because that was more important. And so the brain becomes unplugged with that one issue. And so when you're in the moment, what happens is now after you do that one work, you play it out. And next time that situation comes up, and you can imagine it because the brain doesn't know the difference between you imagining it in vivid detail or it actually taking place. And so, so you can wait for the event or you can just create an event, right? And see how the brain does. Sometimes it'll trip up and you'll watch it and you're like, and that's when we want to, okay, rewind. Let's try again. More processing. Let's try it again. And then go again, right? And what will happen is that in real time, the boundary will come up. It'll be very clear. I need to hold this boundary. And a lot of times they'll say some really beautiful things like, I'm sure it's probably my turn, but I really have this event with my kid that's so important to me. So I'm not going to take this one, but I'll take, now we're collaborating instead of just taking it on the house and getting buried under this stuff because your brain can't think it through in real time and you're stuck and you're doing things you don't want to be doing. Like we can take that apart. And so that whole thing is like trauma covering it, and your brain is firing and it's bringing in all these issues that don't belong there, but it thinks it does because it's trying to figure it out. And so it can't make any like smooth connections. And so it's just, and then life happens to you because you can't participate. Does that make sense? So I never think it's about, let me use my brain. So I never think that it's about the boundaries are being weak as more that it's about people are disconnected from their boundaries. And so as we're looking at neural pathways, we want to hook up the neural pathways. We want to find them. And there's lots of ways to do that. Find the neural pathways between self and boundaries and hook up. We want to find this scenario where I never have any boundaries, and we want to hook that scenario up with the boundaries. And the brain will do this. And you can what I help people do is just walk them through the process of helping their brain hook up like this. And then you'll just hook your boundaries up everywhere where you need them. Does that make sense? I think I feel like I just rocked that explanation. That was a tough one. But that's the deal. That's what we want. And so we want to hook up your boundaries everywhere. And so, because that's how you really start protecting yourself nicely. And that's how you, that's how it's done. That's how you can make yourself predator proof. That's how you can make yourself sexism proof. That was a topic in one of my coaching calls today, sexism. And how you can, so many things. This is how you can really, your boundaries are part of how your job with boundaries is Bring in more of what you like, keep out more of what you don't like. It's really, really simple. And so when you can start hearing yourself tell you, hey, no, we don't like that. No. And your job is to like make sure that doesn't happen. And so we really just want to make that whole process happen nicely. It's never, I don't find it's about strengthening boundaries. So, all right. Great question. I don't see anything else. Let's look. Okay. That was fun, guys. I hope you got a lot out of that. If you have any, if you have questions after this video, or you're watching the replay and you have questions, go ahead and post them. I will respond to that, and maybe I'll make another live about it. But I really hope this helps you understand you have choices, that you're not doomed to a life of medication. Especially that's important for me to tell you, because I hear so many people like that's their worry, is that they don't want to be on medications. Science is showing, there's so many studies showing that the proper treatment for anxiety, depression, traumatic stress is more effective than any medications. And so really you want to get that. And you know it's the right one for you if it feels good, if you like it, if you're seeing results. You should see results immediately because the brain's ready to go all the time. And that's it for me, I think. Wonderful hanging out with you guys. I will talk to you later. Take care.